Well, welcome back, everybody. If you're just tuning in for the first time, welcome to the Galactic Stream Nation. Welcome to the Space Fams. Unfortunately, we just had a bunch of unforeseen circumstances. First, galactic power surge, causing the entire stream to go down. Then, I tried to restart the stream, and it was only streaming to Twitch and not to YouTube. I had to do some shit to make that work, but now it seems to be good, so... Okay. I'm gonna give people a couple more minutes to file in. I know we lost at least a dozen sheep along the path. I don't like that analogy. At least 10 or so space fams left behind by our technical difficulties, and hopefully they find their way back. You're back, trying to stay cool. Air conditioning on the fritz, that's not good. Thanks for sticking in there, of course. Of course, my pleasure. It was my plan to not have to do any sort of sticking in there at all today.
Phrasing?
But, yeah, we are... Apparently, it seems to be everything working okay, from what I can see. Alright, let's get to it. What were we talking about? The environment, that's right. Hurricane Beryl, to be more specifically, or to be more specifically. Oh my god, I sound hilarious. CBS News. Watch Hurricane Beryl's historic day-by-day path across the Atlantic, Caribbean, and U.S. So this is something of a compilation of all of the meteorological data here. Should show us the whole path of this storm. Tropical wave organizes in the Atlantic near Africa. Beryl becomes a tropical storm 6 hours after formation. Beryl strengthens to a Category 4. At this point, it's the earliest Cat 4 on record. Beryl makes landfall in Grenada. Hours later, it becomes the earliest Cat 5 on record. Beryl continues its track across the Caribbean, slightly downgrading. Beryl brushes by Jamaica as a Cat 4. And then brushes by the Cayman Islands as a Cat 3. Before making landfall in the Yucatan Peninsula as a Category 2. Beryl loses steam as it tries to reorganize in the Gulf of Mexico, but quickly regains strength as it makes landfall in Texas. Millions of Texans lose power as Beryl hits the state. Beryl once again is weakened into a tropical depression, but even at its weakest, it produces heavy rain and tornadoes. Yeah, and we've seen a bunch of that damage. It went all the way up to Canada, which is just astounding. Where was it? Did it hit New Brunswick? I can't even remember now. But like, it went all the way up to Vermont, exited into the ocean up the northeast of Canada. I mean, it's just wild. That's just our first hurricane. Second named storm of the season, and you're supposedly in for another at least dozen hurricanes, maybe even 2 dozen at the tippy top of the estimates from the NOAA that we saw earlier this year. It's a bad start. I think somebody here said, who was that? Bob said $30 billion in lost property and economic activity from Beryl already. That is high, and I figure if that's the case, it's probably going to continue to go up, considering they haven't even completely assessed all of the damage, and at least not from what my understanding is. Although I suppose they could be further along now at this point. Speaking of that exact thing, here's CBS News from 16 hours ago, where, according to them, the full scope of Beryl's damage is yet to be assessed, while many are still without power. Wait, volume's too low.
This morning, hundreds of thousands are still without power in Texas, nearly a week after Beryl roared ashore. The storm left a trail of destruction from the Texas Gulf Coast to Vermont. Now, the full scope of Beryl's damage has not been assessed yet, but it is the latest billion-dollar weather and climate disaster to impact the United States this year. So far, there have been 15 such events in 2024. The increasing costs of extreme weather events now have authorities looking to improve their responses as well. Manuel Bojorquez shows us what's new in disaster planning.
It turns out a disaster expo is exactly where you'd want to be if a disaster struck. The latest in emergency supplies of food, first aid,
field hospital,
temporary shelters, even massive pumps, to name a few things. These hands-free umbrellas are marketed to help keep emergency workers cool and dry.
That's nice. This would be very convenient on a hot day.
This particular expo started in the UK. Jack Moss is managing director at Fordham International.
We started off as just a flood exhibition, and then we saw a bit of a gap in the market to be able to expand and basically cover all different types of disasters, which has landed us here in the United States of America.
And we have plenty of disasters here in the United States.
Yeah.
In fact,
that kid is way too stoked. He needs to take it down. He's like way too excited. He's talking about fucking natural disasters with the most excited face that I think I've ever seen anybody have while talking about this shit. My God.
Here, the United States saw the highest number of separate billion-dollar disasters on record, 28, according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration.
Our controller.
The National Hurricane Center is using an interactive virtual reality tool to educate the public about following evacuation orders. I got to try it out.
Oh boy, here we go. So now we've got wind and rain coming into the house. Oh, wow, okay. Now.
Sorry, getting distracted by this. Isn't the part we needed to watch. It's just really the beginning. Distracted by the fancy gadgetry. But yeah, they are still assessing damage from Hurricane Beryl, as it really covers a massive fucking area. Let's talk about this as it relates to the recent floods in Vermont caused by Beryl. Apparently, those very floods are now raising concerns about the nation's aging dams and infrastructure.
As parts of the state flooded this week, officials closely monitored Vermont's dams, including the Waterbury Dam.
Levels in the Waterbury Reservoir are stabilizing, with plenty of storage remaining.
This week's rain from Hurricane Beryl wasn't as severe for dams as last year, when 5 failed and nearly 60 overtopped. However, repeated flooding raises concerns about the durability of aging dams and the safety of people downstream. Most of Vermont's older small dams were built to power textile mills to store water or irrigate farms. With climate change, the dams now face storms beyond their original design.
There are more than 400 dams across the Vermont landscape, the majority of which are privately owned. Well, so the flood control facilities absolutely are owned and operated by the Agency of Natural Resources with support from the Army Corps of Engineers. But most of the balance there is...
That is a fucking disaster waiting to happen in front of us. And Vermont is not alone, right? A lot of this stuff is privately owned by corporations and or people who need these dams or needed these dams for, like they were saying, agriculture and textiles, whatever else you might need or want a dam for, which means that essentially these private owners of dams can release water into communities below them without actually having to make any assessments on what it might do to people downstream. At least that's my understanding, at least in many states. Need more federal
in private hands. We are in the process of trying to get a handle on this, knowing that these dams are rapidly aging, and certainly our changing climate increases the risk associated with them. And currently there is federal funding available to help Vermont dam owners who may wish to remove a dam.
The challenge facing dams in Vermont is playing out across the country as more dams overtop or fail during heavy rains. There are roughly 90,000 significant dams in the United States. At least 4,000 are in poor or unsatisfactory condition and could kill people if they failed, according to data from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. They need inspections, upgrades, and in some cases, emergency repairs.
That's a big number. We really, we really got to address these sorts of things. And I feel like we're not doing enough. At all. Fact is, we have people like, we listened to Lauren Boebert on the stream yesterday, completely misunderstand the Chevron doctrine. But she is exactly the sort of person who's in charge of these sorts of things that doesn't even believe climate change is an important thing to think about. But the fact is climate change is putting a huge number of people in America, in the world, at risk. At fucking risk. Alright, last American story on the climate. CBS New York from 14 hours ago. First alert weather. Downpours and flood alerts around New York City.
Craig Allen has all the latest details on what's already been a very busy morning, what the rest of the day looks like. It looks like it's clearing a little bit for now, Craig.
Trying to. That's right, yeah. The steadiest, the heaviest rains that we had earlier this morning when we were on at 6, it was pouring. Not much lightning and thunder, but it was pouring. And now you can see little breaks in the overcast, some pretty low-hanging clouds here, a couple raindrops left over here on the camera as well. We're looking north on up towards Upper Manhattan. There's the GW over there. So now we can see the GW just barely, but the visibility has improved. There are still plenty of showers around, though. Show you that in just a second on radar. Light and variable breeze at around 3 miles per hour. 74 muggy degrees out there with tropical downpours.
Hold on.
Biggest bad, but I think the steadiest and the heaviest as well on up into New England. But you could see how clearly the rain, the steadiest, heaviest rains, the brightest colors here, are now over the eastern parts of Long Island, the Sound, and into the east or southeast sections of Connecticut. But there is more. Not that it's as heavy, but look what's coming up from Ocean into Monmouth County and over to
So yeah, I'm pretty sure this is remnants of the same storm system, just having tailed off, and yeah, it's possible that parts of New York will be flooded here. Fingers crossed on that one. Hopefully not. All right, let's go and look at the rest of the world and how they're dealing with the climate. This is from 15 hours ago from Euronews. Red alert issued in Croatia as country swelters through heatwave.
A red alert is in place for all of Croatia as the country continues to swelter through a heat wave. The highest temperature on Friday, 37 degrees Celsius, was recorded in the northeastern region of Slavonia and southern Dalmatia. And there's been little respite in the sea. Water temperatures in some areas hit 28 degrees Celsius.
Good God.
During a heat wave last month, Croatia faced major power outages because of overload and the collapse of a regional distribution line.
All right, let's go to Bulgaria, where they are also having to cool off
Animals
zoo
in the Sofia Zoo are cooling off with homemade ice cream. Tony the brown bear's treat is an ice cube with fruit and meat. His caretaker keeps hiding it in a different place, but the 12-year-old bear keeps finding it. The cooling down and playfulness is an attempt to imitate the behavior of animals in their natural habitat.
Това е така нареченото средово обогатяване, което предполага занимаването на животните, всъщност те да не стоят в плен, нали, и да скучаят, а да им се предоставят методи, начини за раздвижване, за търсене на храна и просто за разнообразие, да имитираме максимално тяхното поведение в дивата природа.
Elephants Frozia and Louisa's favorite way to cool off in the summer is by taking a shower. And the Adax, a type of antelope, can easily spend the whole season lying in the sun. Apes Pico and Bloom love the heat, but they also love ice cream.
It looks pretty good.
Главно правим сладолед, специален сладолед с вода и малини, ягоди, които ги замразяваме, които не много обичат да се играят, да го чопват, да се ближат, точно като хората.
The animals are adapted to each season.
Приматите, гигантите, част от тревопасните понасят.
So yeah, just another example of how this climate is affecting everything inside of it. The whole earth is just way too hot. Whether you're in Colorado or Bulgaria, a elephant or a human being, shit's real hot. What kind of ice cream is it? I think it's homemade. I wouldn't recommend you eating it necessarily. But if I was a bear or a lemur or something, I'd be down. All right. Let's go to this. Guardian news from 3 days ago. Heavy rains flood streets and trap hundreds in China. Heavy rains have flooded streets in southwest and central China. Good God. Hundreds of people were displaced as water levels rose in several rivers, triggering flash flooding and landslides. Roads were damaged.
据当地气象部门预计，未来2-3天。 重庆开州区强降雨天气，
最深的地方已经漫过了车辆引擎盖，部分群众经过，结果熄火。此时积水已经漫过轮胎，一家4口被困车上，使用救援车将被困车辆从积水中拖出。经过道路堆积。
This isn't making more beachfront property. No, unfortunately. No, not doing that. It's also causing people lots of problems. Let's go to this. The Associated Press, where a day ago, 2 buses carrying at least 60 people were swept into a river by a landslide in Nepal. It's horrifying. So yeah, unfortunately they do not find anybody in this video. And considering how fast that water is going, my guess is those people are way, way down the river, if they are even alive at all. Fitzcarraldo. What is Fitzcarraldo? I have no idea what that means. Okay, let's go to one story about people trying to solve at least one problem that we have with our environment and our use of waste. This is from Associated Press from 4 days ago. Textile waste piles up in China as fast fashion reigns and recycling takes a backseat. However, there are some people trying in this video to solve that problem. It's a film? Huh. I am unfamiliar with this.
China is the world's largest textile consumer and producer. More than 26 million tons of clothes are thrown away each year, creating mountains of waste. But at a factory in Wenzhou, a city in China's Zhejiang province, recycling efforts are underway. Piles of old clothes are collected and fed into shredding machines. It's the first stage of a new life for the textiles at the Wenzhou Tianchang Textile Company, one of the largest cotton recycling plants in China. However, these recycled textiles are mostly shipped to Europe, far from their place of origin.
China should be the best place for post-consumer waste because we have manufacturers here, we have consumers here, we have the technologies, but unfortunately we have some legislation issues that we cannot use post-consumer waste for garments that we're selling into China market.
Within the domestic market, some innovative Chinese designers are also looking at ways to deal with clothing waste. Shanghai designer Da Bao founded Times Remake in 2019, a brand that takes second-hand clothes and refashions them into new garments.
I think
the most meaningful products are a combination of the past style and current fashion aesthetic to create something unique as a future development for the fashion industry.
Another designer, Zhang Na, creates items made from materials such as plastic bottles, fishing nets, and flour sacks.
我觉得过度的消费主义其实是会蚕食人的心灵的。我希望我做的事情可以慢慢的让这个有一些改变。我们不是反对消费，我们是反对浪费。其实特别希望把这个部分带给中国。
Allegory for civilization. Oh, it's Werner Herzog. Okay. Okay. Well, maybe at some point I'll check that out. Oh. All right, let's go to this. Space news. Little space news to break up the different sections. NASA celebrating James Webb Telescope anniversary with new images.
It has been 2 years since NASA's James Webb Telescope gave us a stunning first look at the depths of our universe. The $10 billion telescope is the largest and most powerful in space. It captured these images showing a small patch of sky with thousands of never-before-seen galaxies. Since the pictures were released in 2022, they've provided insight into when our universe began expanding more than 13 billion years ago. And to commemorate the achievement, NASA has released new images showing two distant galaxies actually interacting with one another. Scientists say that the intertwined galaxies actually resemble a penguin guarding its egg. So for more on all of the mysteries of the universe, I am excited to bring in Jane Rigby. She's an astrophysicist and a senior project scientist for the Webb Telescope at NASA. So who better to talk to? Jane, let's start off just by having you explain a little bit more about what these images tell us.
Yeah, so we have a celebratory image for our second anniversary, and what we're seeing in this image of the penguin and the egg are two galaxies that are not only interacting, they are on a path to merge and become one bigger galaxy. The redder or orangey one, the penguin, that's a spiral galaxy like our own Milky Way, except the arms have been twisted and warped by the gravity of the companion. This is a really common way that galaxies grow over time. Our own Milky Way has merged with other galaxies, and in a couple billion years, it's going to merge with the Andromeda galaxy. So by studying images...
Top Chat? Hidden by Top Chat. You know, what I think Top Chat is doing is it's showing the people who are chatting the most. If you chat less than people, like the most people, you may be hidden by Top Chat. At least that is what I think it's doing. I could be wrong, but it's something that I noticed recently about it when I hadn't chatted in a place for a while, or something like that.
This, we can understand that process in the life cycle of galaxies like the Milky Way.
It's so interesting, the life cycles and seeing these two merge to form another galaxy. When we think about the James Webb, we have to, of course, give proper respect to the Hubble telescope because it was revolutionary for its time. And I actually want to put up a side-by-side where you can take a look at what the James Webb telescope has shown us in comparison to what we saw from Hubble. And it really is incredible, the depths of detail. Talk to us about some of the most important findings that the Webb telescope has discovered since the images were first released.
Sure, and I love in that side-by-side, in Webb you're seeing through the dust. You're actually seeing through our own galaxy to see the other side of our galaxy and then past it. As far as the biggest results to date, and we're 2 years in, our best results are coming in a mile a minute. I would say that it's really important to me that we did exactly what we said we would do to just figure out, what did the early universe look like? What was that?
Huh. What did it look like? Some of these pictures are truly just breathtaking. This one in particular. Just crazy. Okay. Let's go on. Oh, I forgot. Alright, this just came out 39 minutes ago. And I figured I would shove this in here. Breaking news. Forbes breaking news, in fact. He's got a gun. Shocking new on-the-ground footage emerges of the moment. Shooter fired at Trump.
And look what happened to our country. Probably 20 million people. And you know, that's a little bit... He's going down!
stay under here. He's on top of the roof. Don't go over there. He's on the roof, buddy.
He's dead. I just seen his hair go up. They shot him in the head. He's dead. Holy fuck.
Well, if they hit anybody over there.
Did he pull up a shot?
He number of shots.
I thought that was ours.
No, that was him. The first 2 shots were him.
Oh shit, then we have to get down. Draws my fucking holy fuck. I just watched the guy get killed. What do you think? This is cool. Let's go. Holy shit. Let's go. He's on the roof.
Jesus Christ. That was some of the shakiest footage I think I've ever seen. I thought we were already having a crazy week, and then this happened. Just, I am at a loss, chat. You're less relevant. Oh, don't think that. That's terrible. Don't let YouTube tell you that. Fuck you, YouTube. Everyone is relevant here. That video was left over from the Blair Witch Project. Wow. What a reference. Alright, now let's talk about global shit. Sorry, but I just felt like we had to look at that since it's just happening. Just coming out. But let's go to this. Conservatives tank in UK. Will left ascend? Let's find out.
Sam Cedar, Emma Vigland on the Majority Report, joining us now via the phone, or the computerized phone. Owen Jones, columnist at The Guardian, contributor at Zeteo. Owen, welcome to the program.
Hey guys, you know what? Bit of mysterious, you know, just add a little bit of, I don't know, je ne sais quoi. Sorry I'm hiding. I had a little doctor's thing, and I look as demonic as my critics tend to think I am. Well, but I thought that would distract slightly from the content.
We've done most of the show without having the vast majority of our episodes have been like this. So it's no skin off our back, as it were. So, all right. So British elections, give us a sense of like where we were 3 weeks ago in terms of what was anticipated was going to happen in English elections. And then maybe you can explain to us exactly like how this all works.
So we have this again. We have first past the post. It's an electoral system quite similar to your own, which often gives slightly weird results. So the country, the United Kingdom, is divided into 650 constituencies where they're supposed to have roughly the same amount of voting population, and the winner is the candidate that gets the most votes. So if they win 30% of the vote and they come top, they've won first past the post. That's how it works. You know the drill in terms of, states and your elections and how that works. So Labour was on course for a colossal landslide. That's because the Conservatives just destroyed themselves. No government in democratic history in Britain has ever so comprehensively self-immolated. Whether that be the worst squeeze in living standards this country has had in the modern era.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the NHS has been having some serious problems, among other things, in Britain. Dad. Just a bunch of dad comments now that we're watching Majority Report. Hilarious. Yes, that's right. I figured this would be something great to watch since we've been talking about the UK election so much in this stream. Owen Jones is a very, very smart individual who certainly knows more about the British elections than I do, and seeing as he came onto the majority report, it just sort of the triumvirate of awesomeness. So.
Of living standards, I should say, that's significantly worse than most of the Western nations. The average Briton is, on average, at least basically around as badly off or worse than 2010. We've seen the collapse of our National Health Service, the public realm in general. We've seen multiple scandals, Boris Johnson collapsing, obviously, his administration in when he broke the rules of the pandemic, when people couldn't hold the hands of their dying relatives. We had Liz Truss, who came to power with a really hard-right lunacy, this kind of economic agenda of cut the taxes on the rich. Very unpopular, but that crashed the economy. It sent mortgages and rents going up. So the point I'm making is it's just a unique set of calamities, which meant that the Tories were finished. I mean, some of the polls suggested the Conservatives might actually lose their position as the official opposition, that the Liberal Democrats would take over instead. And it was widely predicted that Labour would get well over 40%. That's what Labour got in 1997 under Tony Blair when they won another landslide. That didn't happen. I mean, Labour won a landslide, should be very clear about that. The rules of the game, the electoral system, are you win the seats, you've won the election. It's as simple as that. But Labour won a third of the vote. And in fact, Labour didn't just win a third of the vote in the end. Labour won fewer votes than Jeremy Corbyn got in 2019 when Labour was routed. Labour got, as a percentage, a lot less than Jeremy Corbyn got in 2017. They got 40% then. They only got a third this time. And the reason for that is the Conservative Party collapsed. You got the rise of Reform, which is a hard right party, as I'm sure you all know, Nigel Farage, a close associate of Donald Trump with very similar politics. So what was slightly odd about that is you got a landslide, but on a turnout as well, which is the lowest for 23 years. You also got the rise of the best results of the non-Labour left in British history. So the Green Party, who stand on the left prospectus broadly, they got their highest ever vote share. They got about 2 million votes. They only got 4 seats, but that was 4 times more than they had. They came second in dozens of seats, so they're ready to take them off Labour the next time. And you also got independents that won, standing on particularly anti-genocide platforms. So,
yeah. And we've been talking about this election quite a lot and the results of it. As I'm pretty sure most of you know, Labour has been touted as having a massive victory in this election, and technically on paper, that's what happened. But when you dive into the numbers, that victory becomes less clear. And we've definitely been, I mean, it's certainly better than the alternative if Conservatives had in fact won, but really much of this has to do with a rejection of the Conservatives, of the falling apart, of the crumbling of the Conservative Party in England. And so Labour just kind of like slid in, essentially, as Owen Jones was just saying. They got less votes than they did in the last 2 elections, but still won a majority of the seats, which says a lot about the sort of discontent with the Conservatives. Now, yes, Reform did get some of those votes instead, which is not good because they're even worse somehow. And the Greens and the Independents, such as Jeremy Corbyn, won their, or at least got a lot more votes than were expected. Jeremy Corbyn won his seat. Number of Greens were elected. However, they did not get a very representative number of seats in accordance with how many votes they got, unfortunately. Another thing we've definitely talked about in the past couple of weeks, or however, I guess it hasn't been that long. When did the vote actually end? I guess it could have been 2 weeks ago. God, it's all blending together in my fucking brain now. Hold on, we can't watch this whole thing, even though I really want to, because this conversation's like just super illuminating a lot of this stuff. I'm trying to remember where. I think it's around here.
For what they perceive he was going to do.
Difficult one to adequately frame that, because would some of the independents necessarily have joined? I mean, there are 5 independents which you could say are kind of, you know, they're kind of left of Labour candidates. And just to make clear just how difficult that is, or how rare that is, since 1950, there have been 8 successful independent candidates in a general election in which a political party didn't stand down for them, for example. 8. 5 of them were elected last week. So it's really important to make that point, because it's extremely hard under our system to win, obviously, in the same way it is for you in lots of ways, if you're an independent. So it's very rare. And so you get Jeremy Corbyn plus 4 others.
Oh my God. More breaking news on the situation. The FBI early on Sunday identified the suspected gunman as Thomas Matthew Crooks, 20, of Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. Hold on. I gotta look this up now. Good God. This whole thing has completely thrown the stream into chaos today. Oh my God, yeah. Trump rally shooter identified as 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks of Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. Motive is not clear. This is from NBC News. Hold on. Whoopsies, didn't mean to do that. Switch properly, please. ABC News is your source? Well, I just searched the term that you put in there. Well, this is like tiny. Law enforcement authorities have identified the man who made an assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump at a rally in Pennsylvania on Saturday. The FBI said the shooter, who is dead, was identified as 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks of Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. Motive is still unclear. Gunman was immediately neutralized by the Secret Service. Bethel Park is a predominantly white, relatively well-to-do city in the southern reaches of Greater Pittsburgh. Thomas Matthew Crooks. According to Pennsylvania voter records, listed a Thomas Matthew Crooks with the same address and birth date as a registered Republican. He's a Republican? What the fuck is happening? It was not clear from the records when that was put in place. Okay, at a news conference Saturday night, law enforcement said the investigation was close to making a positive identification of the shooter. That's right, we were listening to that when they did that. Interesting. Okay, well, I think that appears to be most of the important details there. Wow. Well, thank you for keeping us up to date on things happening out there. I can't I certainly struggle to keep up with what's happening while streaming. That is definitely something that is quite difficult. So having other people mention things, it's helpful. Usually, to some degree, especially with stuff like this. Like where this is basically the topic of the day. But I'm still trying to do a stream. A 20-year-old wasn't even old enough to vote in 2020. Oh, good point. Good point, BCAT. I guess we will see. I might start doing some research while we watch this, not gonna lie. But let's go back to the majority report here. Oh, God. We've been waiting all day. Well, not all day, but like, Jesus, like 7 hours now or something like that to hear anything about who this shooter is.
Are mostly focused on Gaza, but didn't exclusively focus on Gaza. And they are disproportionately drew from often communities with big Muslim populations. But you also get the Greens 4, so that's 9. But you also get left-wing Labour MPs. They did try to start purging them all, but they didn't succeed in that. So, for example, Jeremy Corbyn's Shadow Chancellor, his right-hand man, John McDonnell, when Jeremy was leader, he's still an MP. Zawal Sultana, a young, sort of compared to the kind of squad in the US, she's still a Labour MP. Nadia Whittam, Clive Lewis, these are left-wing Labour MPs. So you actually do get, there are now, I don't know, there are probably 30 left-wing members of parliament without going into what I would call the soft left. So you do have a contingent now, or maybe 30 to 40 left-wing MPs. I mean, there's a Scottish National Party who had a battering. They were dominant. I think a lot of people maybe often saw them as left-wing, in which you do get left-wing SNP MPs, but they're civic nationalists. They're focused on independence. You also get Plaid.
Hey, thanks for the raid, no comment chick. Much appreciated. Welcome, NCC viewers. We have been attempting to do the regular stream here, but also keeping up with stuff happening relating to the attempted assassination on Donald Trump. Apparently, the shooter, which was just identified 20 minutes ago, just determined it was Thomas Matthew Crooks of Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. I'm trying to do a deep dive on that in the background right now while we are watching this, which is a discussion about the UK election.
Who are a Welsh Nationalist Party with about 3 MPs who also stand on the left. They're a left-wing Nationalist Party. But yeah, I think there's a contingent, a larger contingent than expected. I think that's the way to put it.
And can you explain to the audience what has been happening with Labour, the hollowing out of the left post Jeremy Corbyn, which might give people a sense of why there's dampened enthusiasm, even though on paper, obviously, Labour won?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, to be honest with you, if they thought Labour, they were only going to get 33.7% of the vote, they would have been devastated by that and terrified, I would imagine. And what happened is Keir Starmer stood in 2020 on the basis that he was basically going to be a professionalised Jeremy Corbyn. He stood on a very similar domestic prospectus: tax the rich, public investment, nationalisation of utilities, abolish tuition fees for students, don't support illegal wars, have human rights, the sense of foreign policy, reverse privatization of the National Health Service. I mean, he U-turned on the whole lot. He also promised a broad church and then started to purge the left and change the leadership rules to try and stop the left ever being able to stand for the leadership of the Labour Party ever again. But also started, before that, when the election started, they tried. For example, they purged someone called Faiza Shaheen, who was a left-wing Labour candidate who would have won under the Labour banner on the left. They saw her as a kind of AOC. She's young, she's a very talented, charismatic, telegenic, working-class woman of colour who defied the odds.
Yeah, and we saw her interview, I want to say, on Channel 4, where she discussed, not just discussed, but also played back a recording from the discussions that were had, in which she was basically crying as she had been just unsurreptitiously booted from the Labour Party out of nowhere. Oh my God, NCC also rating on YouTube's. Thank you, NCC. I hope you had a good stream. I know it was like 10 hours. Because I noticed during one of our breaks that you were still live, and I could have sworn that you started pretty early today. Welcome, Weasels. Welcome. All right. What was I saying? Oh yeah, Faiza Shaheen. who was a pro-Gaza candidate in the Labour Party and was unfairly ousted and unable to run, even though she should have won the district that she was in. And in fact, if I'm not mistaken, the district that she was in had originally, before she had won it, had gone to Conservatives previously, and she had changed. I could be wrong about that. I'm pretty sure that's what happened.
A very successful
like the sort of person
economist.
you want to keep around.
So huge numbers of people on the left have left the Labour Party, including people who voted for Keir Starmer under false pretense, on a false pretense, I suppose. So what happened is you've got a mass exodus of people on the left from the Labour Party. What's interesting actually is there's been this again caricature, I suppose, of, you get this over there, don't you? But is the left are kind of like bourgeois bohemians and their students and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And Keir Starmer actually, unlike Tony Blair, who never spoke about class and thought talking about class was bad, and Keir Starmer appropriated the idea of class politics, but often to batter the left. Kind of portraying the working class as socially conservative, wave a load of flags, talk about migrants in a pejorative way. That's how you win them over. And what's interesting is the polling shows that Labour lost support in areas of deprived communities. That's where they lost support principally.
I feel like there's so many parallels between America and Britain as it relates to the elections recently and the current political climate in our countries. Good God. Is there another piece of this? I think I wanted to watch just like this. I think it's right around here. No, it's towards the end.
Satisfy them, and that radicalized a lot of them, and they ended up going to reform on the basis that immigration is their number one issue. They feel lied to by the Conservatives, and they want to stop the boats. When you ask people, some of them, you ask them, they say, let's shoot them all. There is that. But, there are a lot of them. Yes, the core of reform, I don't think most people know anything about their policies. They do have a manifesto. I think they just think, I don't like immigration. That's, I think, probably...
You think I was the one talking, Emma? Okay, that's funny. No. With my meager 190 some odd subscribers, I have not had the pleasure of being on the Majority Report, although I do hang out in the chats.
That's the driving force. The people aren't voting for any of the meaningful reason, no.
And Owen, give us your sense of where are folks regarding Brexit? Like, what? Like, is there has there been? How are you mentioned that if you had voted for leaving on the basis of you did not want more immigrants, you'd be rather disappointed at this point. What about the whole rest of the agenda? Where does that sit now? And and if there's been any type of like backlash, has there been any accountability or what?
Yeah, I mean, there were lots of promises made about Brexit. The focus, of course, was about immigration, which is that was the biggest single reason why people wanted to leave. There's no question about that. And as I say, net immigration now is higher than it's ever been, which is very funny. To be honest, that amuses me. It doesn't obviously amuse a hardcore in this country. But there was also, I guess, a lot of people also saw it as a vote against the status quo. They saw it as a vote against, people looked at that.
Yeah, and the fact that we heard that sentiment, I think it was most clearly put during a Novara piece that we watched, where they were interviewing people on the street, and you could see that sort of vibe coming out, especially from like the younger crowd who were suggesting that they were going to vote for reform as some sort of almost like a rebellion. Good to see all you weasels in the chat. You can now put on your spacesuits. No comment, chick. Yo to you. How was your 10-hour stream, or however long that was? Hope it was good. Appreciate the raids. Space weasels. Oh, bad lefty. I like that one. Okay, let's keep moving. I'm forgetting how long I've been streaming now because the whole thing got reset. That's what happens when you have a galactic space power surge. You have to restart your goddamn stream. Donald James resubscribed with Prime. According to this notification on the screen, he's taken Jeff Bezos' money and given it directly to StreamLord. What a good idea. I can certainly get on board with that. Thank you very much. All right. How am I? I'm doing fine. How are you? Hopefully well. All right. Let's go south to France. We're going to watch a little piece of this France 24 English piece from 21 hours ago. Macron's a gamble, not paying off. Very difficult way forward for him amid unprecedented division.
And we're in the company of our politics editor, Mark Perlman. Mark, before we turn to domestic politics, again, can you remind our viewers that about how far does the French president's remit extend when it comes to defense policy?
Very far. I mean, when it comes to diplomacy and defense, he is the commander-in-chief here in France. So really, this is his prerogative, and obviously this is something that Emmanuel Macron already indicated he would defend, that it would be his turf, whoever the prime minister was. When the assumption was that it would be a national rally prime minister, and the historical leader of the party, Marine Le Pen, challenged him, saying, you know, head of the army is only an honorary title. Emmanuel Macron's lieutenants immediately lashed back, saying, no, 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 we're talking...
I forgot they talk about this. This is... here's where I should get to it. Yeah.
Doesn't want Macron to make a decision till September. Emerald Maxwell has more.
Just before touching down in Washington for the NATO summit, Emmanuel Macron said in a letter to the French people that no one won the legislative elections. But that view has angered the leftist alliance, the New Popular Front. It received the biggest vote share but fell short of an overall majority.
This letter breaks with the democratic institutions of our republic that the president is supposed to protect, so I'm very worried today about the president's power play. It must be condemned.
Yeah, no kidding. He's just trying to stick a lemon in the eye of the left here. Good for Gabby. Good to see you. Been too long since I've seen you in a live chat. Good to see everybody who's shown up. But yeah, we've been talking about this election a lot ever since Emmanuel Macron called it, and more specifically towards the end when things got real weird, and initially it looked like the National Rally, the far-right party of France, might take the majority, but by the second weekend all had changed. The National Rally came in third. Emmanuel Macron's party, the what's it called, the Ensemble party, came in second, and then the the New Popular Front party, the left coalition party, came together and gained a majority, but not a plurality. Or is it the reverse? Plurality, not a majority. They have the most. They got the most votes, right? But did not get more than 50%. I think they got like 35% or something like that. Which means that Emmanuel Macron here is going to have to learn to play nice. This is an example of him, unfortunately, not playing nice and sending mean-spirited letters to the rest of the government about how nobody won. just so that he could kind of ignore the fact that he, in fact, lost. That's probably the best way to do it. Yeah. Can I please call them the NF-NR? The National Rally is an optics play to hide their Vichy, their French Vichy. I forgot about that. Good point. Good point. That was part of the Marine Le Pen rebranding, wasn't it? I almost... Thank you for reminding me of history. God damn you, Marine. Let's quickly look at this last video about the French elections, also from France 24, 17 hours ago, where French left suggests former communist MP Huguette Bello for premiership.
Markets in...
No, skipping that one. Go to this, please. Thank you.
France's left-wing parties, allied in the new Popular Front, have been pushing to lead the next government, with some competition for the prime minister position between the two largest parties, France Unbowed on one side and the more centrist Socialist Party on the other. The communists have now officially suggested a name, Huguette Bello, a candidate who lives some 9,000 kilometers away.
She is respected by all of the parties at the National Assembly. She heads a region with many difficulties, so she has the strength and dignity of finding solutions in the interest of the population.
Huguette Bello, an MP who represented Réunion Island for 23 years, was member of the Communist Party for 40 years. But more recently, she joined France Unbowed's ranks, running on their list in the European elections. Jean-Luc Mélenchon, seen here campaigning with Bello in April, seems particularly enthusiastic about her candidacy.
There is a name on the table.
This would be huge, okay? The fact that she has Mélenchon's endorsement essentially here is also huge, but especially for leftists just in general, the fact that a communist in the West is being floated for premiership in a large Western democracy is pretty incredible, if you ask me. It's not something I was expecting out of any of the elections this year, including the snap ones. This is pretty huge, you know. Whether or not it will take effect, well, that's to be seen. I will certainly try and keep you appraised of that when the time comes. Just figured we'd watch that story as it's like something of a diamond in the rough of horrible that we are constantly bombarded with every day here on this stream. Okay. Bob Carmody heading to bed. Get some sleep. I know it's getting late. I think technically this stream is already... Let's see. It's like 4 hours in, although I did have to restart midway through. Which one next? Alright, let's quickly look at this, where anti-tourism protests are still continuing in Spain despite economic growth, according to the BBC News.
Let's talk about Spain. The economy has been growing faster than most of its neighbours recently, and that's in great part due to its tourism industry, which contributes around 13% of GDP growth and once again is breaking records. But not everyone is happy about the growth of tourism in Spain, which is now seeing a backlash in many parts of the country. Guy Hedgecoe reports from Malaga.
For more than half a century, a tourism model based on sun and sand has been a driving force for the Spanish economy. And today, it's a main reason why the country's GDP is growing faster than almost all its European neighbours. This year, nearly 100 million foreign visitors are expected, a new record.
We have been responsible in the last years of the most important percentage of growth of our economy. In 2023, we were responsible of 80% of the whole GDP growth of Spain, because other sectors were not growing, neither at the speed nor at the level of the tourism.
But Spain's relationship with tourism seems to be at a tipping point. A backlash has started as the country counts the cost of an industry which has been so lucrative. Popular holiday destinations like the Canary Islands and
Yeah, and this is the thing, right, that we are dealing with, not just in Spain, but across the world, right, where certain groups of people are benefiting greatly from global capitalist forces and things like that, especially landowners and people who are already heavily invested in industries that are doing well right now. But the rest of everybody is having to deal with the downstream effects of that, like higher rent, more expensive goods, and all the other sorts of nonsense that we're dealing with, including the environmental impacts of a lot of this stuff. And yeah, people in Spain are kind of pissed. And I think we looked at a story recently. I can't remember. Yeah, I think so. Where, you know, Spain is dealing with a serious rental and housing crisis right now, and people there are struggling just to survive. Which is why they're pissed off that they see other people coming from other countries coming there not to live and to contribute, but just to kind of throw their wealth in the Spanish people's faces. Which I think I can understand being upset by that. The fact is, I think one of the protests we saw a couple people saying, "Hey, if you want to move here, move here. We'd love to have you." You know, in a very pro-immigrant kind of way. But then, you know, on the other hand, immediately switch to the other foot and be like, you know, if you're a tourist, you can go fuck off. So, you know, and I don't quite understand every sort of intricate detail of Spanish politics, but it does, at least that sentiment, I think, makes a lot of sense. What are we talking about? People in chat think that Soul Life's earbud is somehow inside of him. My God, that sounds terrifying. Maybe you could use what's it called? Like one of those find your device services. Does it ding? Can you make it ping? Ping it. Okay, let's go to a different set of protests that have been happening over the last 48 or so hours. And that is the protests that have been happening in Albania, where they are asking for the resignation of Prime Minister Edi Rama. Let's go there.
Opposition supporters in Albania have staged a protest in the capital Tirana demanding Prime Minister Edi Rama step down. They accuse Rama, who's been in power since 2012, of corruption. They also demanded the release of opposition leader Sali Berisha, who's been held under house arrest on corruption charges since last year, in a move many say is politically motivated. Protesters pelted a government building and the mayor's office with petrol bombs.
So yeah, people are pretty pissed off over there. Now, I've been trying to figure out what it is that he's been or being accused of as it relates to corruption. And from what I can gather so far, some of it seems to have to do with like funding received, I think that Albania got from the IMF a number of years back. And although it's not just that, but I unfortunately have not been able to really grasp what's happening yet. Unfortunately, all I know is that people are pissed about whatever, some sort of corrupt acts allegedly that the Prime Minister may or may not have committed here. Hopefully soon I'll have a more concrete answer on what the fuck is going on in Albania. To be honest, Albania isn't a place that I pay a ton of attention to most days and or streams that we do here. But this is essentially a response to what has been happening in the streets, where apparently the opposition leader, Freddie Baleri, who we were just talking about, has been temporarily freed from an Albanian prison.
Freddie Baleri will temporarily leave Albanian prison to be sworn in as an MEP in Strasbourg, according to the Greek public broadcaster ERT. Baleri, a member of Albania's ethnically Greek minority, is serving a prison sentence until October for buying votes in a local election, authorities allege. The 52-year-old was elected to European Parliament earlier this year. The centre-right Greek New Democracy politician will return to jail following the inaugural session.
See, I don't think that's the outcome that people in Albania are asking for. I think that when they meant release him from prison, it was more of a definite rather than sort of indefinite thing. For just a momentary swearing in to go right back to prison. I don't think that's what they were asking for, not gonna lie. Albania is the poorest country? Is that true? They're the poorest country in Europe? I was actually unaware of that fact. This is why having a bunch of brilliant people in chat to help collaborate is such a helpful thing. All right. Let's go south. Talk about another set of protests. Wow, there's a lot of protests happening around the world. I'm sure that most of you remember the protests that have been happening in Kenya over Ruto, I can't remember his first name. The prime minister there, or president there, I mean, who has also been accused of corruption as well as having policies which do not benefit the majority of Kenyans, especially the youth in Kenya. There have been massive protests in the streets, as well as police crackdowns on those protests, which resulted in deaths, which resulted in unknown number of people being literally whisked off the streets extrajudicially and disappeared. there are still plenty of people right now that they are trying to find and get released from prison or wherever they're being held. This is from Reuters from a day ago, where according to them, bodies have now been found as police in Kenya, as the police chief in Kenya has resigned. Yeah.
Several bodies were found in a Kenyan quarry on Friday, eyewitnesses and rights groups say, amid ongoing tensions following anti-government protests. The bodies were found in Mukuru, a collection of slums in the capital, Nairobi.
So, atujui.
Mukuru Justice Center activist Milia Nyamota says most of the bodies are women and that they, quote, don't know whether they are among the people who were abducted because of the protests. Activists have accused police of using excessive force and abducting dozens in attempts to quell deadly protests last month. Intense criticism forced Kenya's police chief, Japhet Koome, to resign on Friday. President William Ruto announced Kome's resignation the day after he fired nearly his entire cabinet. The Mukuru discovery comes after the body of Denzel Amandi, a protester who disappeared during the demonstrations, was found last week in a quarry outside Nairobi, according to Amnesty International. Ruto said that reported abductions were regrettable and that any officer found responsible would be held to account. A government spokesperson shared a police statement on the social media platform X, saying that authorities are analyzing samples to identify the deceased.
Yeah. So there's no clarity yet as to whether or not these missing or dead people that were just found, what I believe is a garbage dump, are in fact victims of the police or not. But it certainly adds to this increasingly problematic situation going on in Kenya. And I do hope that the protesters are soon listened to by the government. Now let's look at this from Reuters as well. According to them, Kenya's opulent lawmakers are part of the fuel which has led this protest movement in Kenya.
Videos like this have added fuel to simmering anti-government anger in Kenya. The lavish lifestyles of lawmakers splashed across social media.
Then you need to check yourself.
In April and May, during the build-up to recent widespread protests, MP Zahir Janda posted these on TikTok, triggering an angry response online. Protesters have since tried to storm his home in the western town of Kisii. Janda did not respond to requests for comment. But he's also not the only one.
For fuck's sake. he needs the range and the bends. Okay. Meanwhile, the rest of Kenya, or at least the southeast of Kenya, which we saw earlier, people's homes were destroyed. And they were then given $75 in most cases to restart their lives after the government destroyed their homes. Granted, those homes were in a flood delta, but $75. Meanwhile, dudes like that living it, just lavish. Oh my god, my other monitor just died. Fuck you. What is happening today? Why? This is me right now.
Help! I'm being repressed!
Okay, hold on. I gotta unplug and replug this fucking monitor in. Fine. Let's see if I care. It's kind of hot here. Yay, it worked. That's good. All I had to do was reset the monitor. Okay, back to Kenya.
Kenya's protests, initially sparked by proposed tax hikes, have increasingly drawn attention to the large salaries, perks, and ostentatious lifestyles of lawmakers. That's in a country where 3/4 of the population is young and well-paid work is scarce. And, according to artist and activist Rachel Stephanie Akinyi, where most Kenyans are sleeping hungry.
Why would you show us your lavish lifestyle and still not do your job as a leader, you know? What are you trying to show us? That we have the power to use your money the way we want to take care of our own needs? But what about us?
Absolutely.
Fury boiled over in Kenya on June 25th, when protesters stormed Parliament and set it ablaze. Since then, private residences and businesses of several lawmakers, mainly those associated with the ruling coalition, have been attacked. Ruto climbed down on the tax proposals and on Thursday, in a further sign of the pressure being brought by the protests, dismissed his entire cabinet apart from the foreign minister. Ruto, who came to power after portraying himself as a champion of low-income hustlers, has said some officials have displayed obnoxious opulence. And it's also an issue that was raised in Parliament by Senator Bonnie Kalwale.
The public display of wealth and opulence, unless members of the public can quickly see where you've gotten it, they will not be happy. Over the weekend, I was speaking of a young member of parliament from my community who has bought a helicopter.
Yes, I have a helicopter.
This fucking guy. Yes, I have a helicopter. Why not? I'm killing it in life. Okay, pal. Okay, let's move on. I do hope that the voices of the people are heard in Kenya sometime soon, rather than having them be talked down to by a bunch of assholes who are taking advantage of them and of the power that they happen to be privy to. All right, let's move on to talking about the Middle East. Yeah, start here by talking about the United States as it relates to the Middle East. CBS Evening News from a day ago. Navy pilots welcomed home after deployment defending. Sorry, let me revise this. Navy pilots welcomed home after deployment defending Israel against Houthi attacks.
Many
Japanese Coast Guard video shows a member of the special rescue team being lowered to a...
Oh wait, no, this is the wrong video. This one, thank you.
Several squadrons of U.S. fighter jets made a hero's homecoming today, arriving in Virginia after a tense 9-month deployment in the Middle East. They were part of a strike group with the USS Eisenhower aircraft carrier confronting Iranian-backed Houthi militants. Here's CBS's Charlie D'Agata.
A homecoming flyover in the skies over Virginia Beach, to the relief of families waiting below. The F-18 fighter pilots who've been at the sharp end of fighting for almost 9 months, at sea and at war. Can you briefly describe what it was like out there?
It's so fucked up to see these people coming back home to peace, to their families, to, you know, whatever the fuck they want, right? Meanwhile, everyone in Gaza is being left in just the worst imaginable situations, and we, those soldiers in particular, had a hand in making sure that those people continued to be in those very situations. I think it's kind of gross that CBS is deciding to, what's the word? Bolster these people, call them heroes, like I think I heard them say before. Or maybe they didn't. Maybe I'm just hearing things. But, they are celebrating these people for what is essentially aiding and abetting a genocide. And it's very frustrating. We're not going to listen to the whole thing, but it was really annoying to me. Which is why I felt like we had to watch at least 10 seconds of it so I could yell at CBS or whoever this is. Yeah. Whitest family ever. They're certainly in the running. They're certainly in the running. If there is a competition for that. We can get, what's it called? Who are the people that do the records again? Guinness World Records. We can see if they can verify any of that. Alright, let's go on to talk about this very frustrating story. Al Jazeera English from 3 days ago. The take. Israel's backdoor annexation of the occupied West Bank.
Illegal.
Al Jazeera Podcasts.
Today, the new facts on the ground in the occupied West. I'm Malika Bilal, and this is The Take. Israel has quietly approved a plan to confiscate large swaths of land in the West Bank. It's set to be the largest land grab in the occupied territory in more than 30 years. That's according to Peace Now, an Israeli monitoring group. They're a watchdog for settlement growth.
We are the ones to say that it was so big because we collected the information about previous land grabs.
That's Hagit Ofran from Peace Now, the Israeli monitoring group that released a report on land seizures.
It is called the Declaration on State Land, but it's actually a way for Israel to confiscate land and to make it available for settlement. And it's a totally different ballgame now.
2024 will mark the peak year for Palestinian land confiscation since the Oslo Accords of back in 1993, with Israeli authorities set to confiscate 23.7 square kilometers in the Jordan Valley and designate it as state land.
The latest seizure is a long strip of land that stretches from the northern West Bank to the Jordan Valley in the east, Palestine's food basket.
You're not just talking about farmers who have been...
So the most recent strip of land taken is the most farmable land in the West Bank. It's completely illegal.
Illegal.
Any land being taken by Israel in the West Bank is illegal. And my understanding about this particular strip of land and the other settlements that have been getting built recently are that they are connecting all the other Israeli settlements together and essentially creating an even worse future situation, as at some point there will be some kind of reckoning. There will be some kind of, at least I would like to think that there will be some kind of peace deal that will be struck, and where borders will have to be reestablished. And it's, this is misguided at the very least, and an absolute fucking atrocity at the worst, right? Because not only is it disenfranchising Palestinians from their own land, and Palestinians are being killed over it, and all of these sorts of things. But it is, you know, it is going to have to be dealt with at some point. And you can almost guarantee that there will be even more violence when settlers are told to leave, which is something in my mind is going to happen. I could be wrong, but, you know, it happened before, and it will most likely have to happen again. Because you cannot have a West Bank that looks like Swiss cheese, which is what it is right now. Because of all the fucking settlements that have been illegally created in the West Bank, there's no clear borders to Israel or Palestine or Gaza or West Bank or whatever else right now because of what has been going on. It'd be nice if we go back to like 67 borders, but when you start talking about 67 borders, that includes having to essentially eject like a million settlers, I think. You don't see that happening anytime soon? Yeah. I mean, I don't see it happening very soon either. But at some point, I do think it will have to happen to reestablish borders in some sort of way, unless the one-state solution happens. But we all know just how little Israelis, especially the current government of Israel, care for that solution, a one-state solution in which Palestinians would have a vote in Israeli elections. There's been adamant sort of disapproval coming from people like Benjamin Netanyahu and Itamar Ben-Gvir over any suggestion of a one-state solution in which that would be a reality. So, you know, that's why, in my opinion, at some point, when peace talks are taken seriously, that will have to be a part of the conversation unless they want to have a one-state solution. But I see a one-state solution as being even less likely. I could be wrong, but I've been wrong. But that's just my estimation of the current situation. All right, let's go to this from TRT World from a day ago. According to them, nearly 10,000 Palestinians have been arrested by Israeli forces since October 7th. 10,000. It's 50 times as many as were taken on October 7th. So it would seem like Israel is actually the main hostage taker right now.
After 9 months in Israeli prisons, Muazzez Obayyat finally embraces freedom. Shaggy hair and unable to walk or speak, he's surrounded by his family and friends. His body is free, but his soul and mind are still shackled by his memories in prison. He's so distraught that he can't recognize his own parents, wife and children.
They beat me very badly. They hit me everywhere, all over my body. I was handcuffed with iron chains. They burned my legs.
He was held without charge under an Israeli military order court administrative detention and seen by a doctor only once in 9 months. Muazzez painfully tries to recall his harrowing experience. Like thousands of other detainees, he was stripped naked and beaten. He says he was always handcuffed and blindfolded.
Always handcuffed and blindfolded.
There is a unit in the Negev prison called Keter. This unit...
It is fucking disgusting. God. In no way is any of what he's described an acceptable treatment of a supposed prisoner. This is just... how has it gone on this long? That's my question.
Was attacking us from the beginning of the war until the day I left the prison. They were beating me with iron pipes, with their hands and with their feet, beating that the mind cannot bear.
Outbreaks of skin diseases among prisoners were rampant. He says in prison the food was poor. They were always hungry, thirsty and sick. Before being arrested, Muazzez was a bodybuilder and a weightlifter. He worked as a butcher in his village.
The food was very bad. The rice was not fully cooked. They cut off our water and electricity, and we were in the cold winter. I did not shower for 90 days. They gave us one bottle of water to drink from.
He's now undergoing intense physical and psychological examinations at a Palestinian hospital. Muazzaz's family tried to make sense of a senseless act of torture. They are relieved to see him free, but shocked at his condition.
Yeah, I think we're all shocked by his condition. There's 9,999 more, just like him, still being held. Without charge, in most cases. Just being Palestinian in Gaza was good enough. Or being Palestinian and in the West Bank, or being Palestinian and in East Jerusalem, or whatever. And it is just, you know, it's completely ignored by the Western media just how many prisoners are being held right now that, you know, are also technically hostages, right? Even though they're being described as prisoners, they're still they're being talked about as part of the exchange of hostages, right? But the Western media is just using different words for the same thing. Thankfully, we have other media sources to go through, like TRT, that's willing to look at this kind of shit and actually tell us the facts about this particular circumstance. Those are just the ones since October 7th. That's right, 10,000. Yeah, there's plenty of other hostages from before. Before that, plenty of military prisoners being held, or well, not military prisoners, but Palestinians being held in military prisons. That's the right way to say it. Under military law, by the way, not civilian law. Okie dokie. What else do we have to talk about here? Let's look at this. It's one thing that Western media does seem to be willing to recognize. That Gazans are hungry right now. Here's global news from a day ago.
In the West, kids are told to eat their greens, but this mother of four wishes she was cooking up anything instead of mulberry leaves. We place them in boiling water to get poached, says Fatima, so that the children can tolerate it.
Jesus
Nothing
Christ.
in it is tolerable.
That's not food.
She calls it animal food, but when her husband and 3 small sons head out...
That is not food. What's happening? Why isn't my mouth moving? Hold on. I have to fix this. Oh my god, this is so incredibly frustrating. Fact is, none of this would be continuing if, oh shit, what's happening? Oh, I realize what's... I see. Hold on. I gotta do something just to make a sound happen in the background. Hold on. Does that fix it? Fixed? Yay. Fixed. Okay. Good. Okay. We have to go back, because this is ridiculous. This woman is cooking leaves. This is not... you might be familiar with a mulberry tree. The leaves are not intended for human consumption. They're just tree leaves. It's like saying I'm cooking oak leaves for dinner, or maple leaves for dinner. Have you ever tried eating a leaf in your life? There's a leaf off a tree. They don't taste good. They're not nutritious. Some are poison, but are mostly just what do you call it? You know, it's not intended for humans to eat.
She calls it animal food, but when her husband and 3 small sons head out in search of food amongst the piles of concrete in northern Gaza, it's what they can find. This week, a group of human rights experts said that famine has spread throughout the enclave. Israeli officials said the statement amounts to misinformation.
I really hope that the situation becomes calmer soon.
You actually have tried eating leaves because you used to play fake restaurant with your sisters. That was actually going to be my only qualifier to that statement, was that perhaps you've tried as a child, but certainly not as an adult in which to attempt to sustain yourself, I would assume.
And that peace prevails soon.
A WHO team shared images of a visit to field hospitals in Deir al-Balah and Khan Yunis as they push for more open and continued access for aid groups. Medical care, food, and shelter have been a struggle for the past 9 months. Those who have managed to survive are continuously displaced by intense fighting. Life that is instilled in us will not let us stop the war until we achieve all its goals, said Benjamin Netanyahu. At the same time, the Israeli Prime Minister said,
how can this man continue saying all this stuff when you have people in Gaza looking like it's 1944 again? It is disgusting. The level of starvation that we are seeing now, the images that are coming out of Gaza are the most horrifying images that I think humanity can manage to produce. The starvation at this point is so apparent that I don't see how anybody can continue to say that. Well, first off, I never quite bought the reasoning for what's been happening in Gaza to begin with. But point is, I don't see how there can still be any people either calling for this to continue or still supporting it, such as the United States, who just reapproved the use of, or not just the use of, the transfer of 500-pound bombs to the IDF for the purpose of continuing the fucking mass atrocities being committed there. It's just horrifying that any of this is still fucking going on right now. Let's go to this really quickly. This is from Novara Media from a day ago. Britain's complicity in Gaza genocide is worse than you thought. Oops, there we go.
It's long been clear the UK is complicit in the genocidal war being inflicted on Gaza by Israel. We trade with Israel, we sell them weapons, and we give them diplomatic cover. But a new report by Declassified shows just how far this complicity goes. So the outlet has revealed that throughout the war, the United States has been flying special forces planes to Israel via a UK base in Cyprus. They've actually been reporting on this for a while. They've got a bit more detail sort of about precisely which type of planes have.
Revealed. America's secret special forces flights to Israel from UK base on Cyprus. The US military has been flying covert planes to Israel from RAF Akrotiri since the bombing of Gaza began. That's pretty condemning. So yeah, the UK is just slightly more complicit than you thought.
Israel via a UK base in precisely which type of planes have been taking off from Cyprus and heading to Gaza. The UK always says we don't comment on the actions of our allies, but it does seem pretty clear that sort of support is going to Israel, and support for their military campaign is going to Israel via a UK military base.
Yeah, that is unfortunately a continuing condemnation of the UK government in regards to its actions as it relates to Gaza and Israel. Not great. Will labor change? tactics to be seen. However, I am not super optimistic on that right now, but who knows what the future holds in store for us. Could be good. Fingers crossed. Declassified UK is a great outlet too. I'll look into that. Thank you, Pet Lefty. Okay, now let's look at the recent fucking strikes that occurred in Gaza, which have, according to the latest sources, killed at least 90 people and injured 300. Start with CBC from 9 hours ago. Oh, whoopsies. Will you let me switch? There we go. Thank you.
Israel says it cannot confirm it got its man during a targeted airstrike on a coastal community in Gaza today. And that is raising new questions about its military tactics. This was the scene following the strike in a designated humanitarian zone near Khan Yunis. Gaza health officials say 90 Palestinians were killed and another 300 wounded. Israel says this was their main target. He's alleged to be one of the masterminds of the October.
One man was the intended target of this? Wow.
7th Hamas attack on Israel, and someone the World Court's chief prosecutor wants arrested for war crimes. However, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says there's no conclusive proof of his death so far. CBC's Anna Cunningham has more from London.
More lack of evidence for Israel? Shocking.
Well, there are two differing stories emerging as to exactly what happened in Gaza earlier. The images into us from a cameraman working for the CBC News in Gaza appear to show people in Al-Mawasi near Khan Yunis fleeing after a strike and people being carried away injured on stretchers. The Hamas-run health ministry says the Israeli airstrike was on a designated humanitarian area, but a military official for the Israeli Defense Force has described this as a precision strike based on accurate intelligence. And they said...
Wow, precision. And you're going to repeat those words? Okay. Okay. Ugh. God.
That the targets were the head of Hamas's military wing, Mohammed Deif, and also another top Hamas official, Rafa Salama. They've been described as masterminds of Hamas's October 7th attacks on Israel.
Okay.
In a statement that we've seen from Hamas, it says these Israeli claims that it targeted leaders of the group were false, and it also said they were aimed at justifying the attack in a designated humanitarian.
No kidding. Really? Israel? Justifying an attack on civilians by claiming Hamas was there, meanwhile having no evidence for it? When have we heard that story before? Oh, right. Every single day for the last 8 or 9 months. Oh, my fucking God.
Zone. Now, the IDF have contradicted this, saying that the strike was on an operational compound run by Hamas, and that senior...
In Al-Mawasi, the humanitarian zone designated by Israel, are you really going to continue just repeating Israeli talking points for us? Is that the plan? My God, CBC, you suck. You really do suck. The fact is the Al-Mawasi camp was one of the main recently declared humanitarian zones by Israel. It's near is part of like the Khan Yunis area, if I'm not mistaken, which was another part of the supposed zone that everyone was supposed to go to from Rafah, where they were originally told to go to from the rest of Gaza and the other supposed safe zones. The fact is safe zone means fucking nothing to Israel aside from a convenient place to corral civilians for easier killing. Okay. Now the fact is I can't remember which one of these stories they say it. Maybe we'll get to it. But Benjamin Netanyahu has already said publicly that he approved that strike, which killed which wounded 300 and killed 90 people in a place that they had themselves
commanders had they
declared to be safe.
Well, for more, I'm joined on set by our International Affairs Editor, Philip Turl. Hi, Philip.
Hi, Jenny.
Can you give us some details then behind the most recent strike in Gaza and who was targeted by Israel?
Right, well, Israel's...
Hold on. I just want to remind you, actually, I forgot to say it. This is actually our penultimate video of the night. Great job getting here, folks. You've withstood quite a lot of adversity to get yourself here, so pat yourself on the back.
Area, and there was also a time when food supplies were being handed out. Many people were trying to obtain water just to live on as much as a normal basis as they possibly can. So that explains also, I think, why the number of casualties in this raid was so high. There's been a reaction also from Francesca Albanese, who's the UN human rights rapporteur for the Palestinian territory. She just says the area there is now become hell on earth, and has accused the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of really wanting to destroy Hamas, not changing at all in his perspective that that's what he wants to do, backed up by his far-right government in Israel, and there's little or no possibility that he wants to move towards a peace deal with Hamas to try to find a way out of the conflict in Gaza. Then there's also been a reaction from the United States. This is slightly before what happened today, but that they are saying that basically there is some hope that this peace deal is being worked towards, and there has been some progress. Seeing what happened today, it's pretty hard to understand that that is the case. But no President Biden in the last few days has remained pretty optimistic about it, saying that the peace proposal that he put forward a couple of months ago has been looked at by...
My God, has it already been a couple of months since that fucking peace proposal was put forward? They have taken that thing so unseriously. They being Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu's government. It is insane. I cannot believe it's been this long. How has it gone on this long without anything being done? Yeah, just being reminded of how long it's been just broke me inside. Oh my God. When is America? When are we going to draw the line on this shit? Where's the fucking, Oslo Accords or whatever else? Where's the actual peace process that we've been told is supposed to be happening that is clearly not fucking happening? Because we live in a circus? Yeah, seriously though. Alright, we're gonna end it just talking about this strike, which is just should have never happened, like most of the strikes that have happened. BBC News. Let's see what they have to say about this.
At least 90 Palestinians have been killed in an Israeli airstrike near Khan Yunis in Gaza. That's according to a Hamas-run health ministry there, which also says around 300 people have been injured. The attack was inside a designated safe zone, Al-Mawasi, where the Israeli military had urged displaced Palestinians to seek shelter. Well,
I don't want reality.
Israel says it was targeting Hamas military commanders, but it says it cannot confirm whether or not they were killed.
Yeah, like
Virgil Keane reports now from Jerusalem, and just a warning, his report does contain some disturbing details from the start.
The Israelis told them they would be safe here. Today, they bombed Al-Mawasi, killing scores, wounding hundreds, saying they targeted senior Hamas leaders hiding among civilians.
We were sitting in the tent, nothing was happening. Suddenly a rocket fell. Children were in pieces. Look at us, world, have some feelings.
The streets around the blast sites littered with casualties. Our cameraman arrived at the aftermath to find a refuge devastated. At Al Nasser Hospital, the dead were taken out as the wounded kept arriving. The bombs blasted through concrete and flimsy shelters and into the bodies of human beings.
Oh, this really is heartbreaking. Just sort of a slow destruction of my faith in humanity.
What do they look like? Asks Mohammed Sakir. In pieces and cut up. You find heads and hands here and there. You find feet. It was an ugly image. This is the man Israel says.
Hold on, we're just going to skip past this. We already talked about this.
Is unclear. Tonight, Israel's leader said he'd approved the attack in advance.
There is still no absolute certainty that the two were eliminated, but I assure you that we will get to all of the Hamas leadership, one way or another.
Oh my god, how can he say this with such a fucking blasé attitude? He just blasted fucking hundreds of people. And he's acting like it's a game of Battleship. Oh, wait, maybe Hamas wasn't there? Okay, try B-12. I mean, what in the fuck? Oh, this dude's such a piece of shit.
Osama Ahmad's father was one of those killed today, a rescue worker. I only saw you this morning, he says. But gone all such mornings. And what faith here now in Israel's promise of a safe zone? Fergal Keane, BBC News, Jerusalem.
Well, we can go.
Fucking horrifying. But at least we know definitively that all of that horrific shit we just witnessed was completely approved by Benjamin Netanyahu. Whether or not they got Hamas, not actually the main objective. We'll get to it. First, the genocide. That's basically what he just said. Absolutely just... It just really drives me to this place of just pure disbelief, anger, and questioning why and or how anybody could think and act like that. And it just, it's not, you know, it shouldn't, none of it should be surprising to me. And honestly, it kind of isn't. But that's part of the problem, right? Is that we've seen so much of this at this point that it's become almost expected. And the fact that it's become expected should give us all a clue as to, you know, if we aren't there yet, what the intentions of all of this is, what the objectives of all of this is. And it's about time that leaders in the countries that are involved in this, that have a hand in all of this, wake the fuck up and start treating it like what it is. A genocide in fucking progress with zero justifications, as all genocides are, and it's time to stop the complicity and do something about this shit. Well, we got through another one. At least for me, it was incredibly difficult. I hope it was slightly easier for all of you to get through this. Thankfully, we had each other. That's it for me. Till I see you next time, stay classy, Galactic Stream Nation. Can't forget this. Oh, what's happening? There we go. Whoa. Ah, beautiful. These are your galactic patrons. Gabby, Goth Dogs, Aaron W, Biddy, Afroponics, Interplanet Janet, PB, Robot Cat, The Anti-Corporatist, Onob, Nadia, Mrs. Jen, Pitchforks Dragon, Omega Star, Vincent Morales, and Donald James X. That's right. All these people you see here have helped to produce the show that your eyes and ears just got done enjoying. You can too, for just a few dollars a month, by clicking this link here. Chat. Why not do it? The space benefits are so bountiful. Well, just give it a thought. Bounce it around your head. Oh. Oh no, Soul Life unsubscribed.